But we do want to kick off this hour and bring in Fox Weather hurricane specialist Bryan Norcross. It was only, Bryan, a couple of weeks ago that we were watching Tropical Storm Erin move through, as we look in the Atlantic Basin now, through that main development region. This current area, though, it is unlike Erin in that it's in absolutely no hurry to move through the MDR.
Yeah, Erin was speeding along. This one is creeping along. And I'll show you why I think it's creeping along at the moment, but lots of different issues with this one. But the models are increasingly showing an effect on the islands and question marks downstream because it's moving so slowly. So one of the big rules of forecasting is when storms are moving slowly or disorganized or just developing, the forecasts are likely to change. And indeed, we're seeing that with the computer forecast with this one. So this is the system we're talking about down here. But look, there's another system up here. This one is kind of moving this way. It's not really a surface system, but I think because there's a general flow around it, steering flow around it in that direction, that's kind of holding this one back for now. But this one is going to speed along, get out of the picture, and then leave our lower system, the one we're concerned about, to develop or not develop, or whatever's going to happen to it, probably develop. But you can see, just looking at it, it's not doing much, not moving very fast, 5 to 10 miles per hour, but it is moving to the west in the general direction of the Caribbean islands. It's just going to take a good week before it gets in that vicinity. And it has this dust around it. You can kind of make out a line right there. There's the borderline of the dust. It's kind of like a front. Imagine moist tropical air coming up this way, and then you have the Saharan dust coming this way, and then across that line, what do you have? You have spin, and that's what is getting this thing going. The question is, when does it break free of that dust border? That dust border is something called the intertropical convergence zone in this case, which is clusters of thunderstorms that are always there, and this one is now kind of getting a little more isolated, so it has to be all by itself, away from that ITCZ, away from the dust, push the dust away before it can begin to develop. That's why I don't think it's going to happen right away, but eventually it's going to take probably until the weekend before it can develop according to the computer forecast. But the Hurricane Center says 80% chance that it becomes at least a depression in this area, more likely in this part of the area over here. And the idea is that it's generally approaching the islands in about a week. And I'll show you that timing here when we look at this computer forecast. So this is just one example of a model. Now, there are a whole variety, as we know, and we look at the variety to understand what the possibilities are and look for a consensus to understand what, based on the data we have right now, the most likely thing is. So here's just one. This is the European model, as it turns out. There you see the cluster of moisture. You also see it's part of this kind of continuous belt there. That's that ITCZ. So can it break away as it moves to the west? Here we are today, Thursday, September 4th. All right, let's go forward in time and watch it go through the week here. Here it goes over the weekend. It's trying to break away. Finally, it does. You notice by early next week, it breaks away so that by a week from now, it's over the islands. Notice it doesn't have a whole lot of moisture with it, but it does have a circulation. So by that time, it would be a tropical depression. It has this dry air following it, so the conditions are not ideal for it to strengthen quickly. Although if it can push that away, push the dry air away, then it's possible. So obviously next week, everybody in the northeastern Caribbean here, from about Barbados to the north, needs to stay in close touch with what's going to happen with this thing. We look at our Fox exclusive tropical threat graphic, and what you see is in here is where it's most likely to develop. But notice when we get down here, we get to the blues, and the blues, the 20 and 30% chance. So where is it going to be here? Is it going to be in this area? That's the most likely, but it's only a 20 to 30% chance. Also could be north, so it turned north sooner. A number of the models indicate that, but more and more are showing it in this area close to the islands, plus or minus. So we're just going to be aware of that. We also notice that there's this low odds of it going up in here, which we're going to keep an eye on. Why would it go up in there? Well, there's this huge dip in the jet stream here. Now remember, this thing is moving slowly, and the dip in the jet stream is moving slowly. The dip in the jet stream is eventually going to eject out. Notice in here we have an upper level low right there. How is that going to affect this? Is that going to keep this weak? If that keeps this weak, then this big dip, this scoop, is probably not going to pick it up. If that thing is weak and this thing can turn north, then the scoop will probably get it. So we're talking about a week or more from now, but the main message I want to leave with you here is we have a big question mark down here of exactly what's going to happen once we get past about a week from now, because we have all these moving parts and it's just too early to know. But this is a potential threat to the islands, and then we'll see after that. It's about the best we can say right now. Stephen, Marissa?
Yeah, I mean, looking what? A week out, we have time to wait to see, much like we did with Aaron on many levels. And we'll keep it in the Atlantic just for a second longer, Bryan, because as we're noticing here, there's some blue shading closer to home, closer to land, and the latest long-range outlook from the CPC highlighting potential development in the Gulf, in the Northern Caribbean for perhaps the second to third week of September, which isn't that surprising when you consider where we are in the season. But can we speak a little bit more about that and the potential setup? Because so far, we have had fronts stall over Florida, but fortunately nothing tropical has developed off of them.
Yeah, and if something develops out of this one, it's more likely to be on this side, actually, the front that we're dealing with. And you've been talking about this big cold front that's coming down. It's been causing all the rain in Florida and then getting reinforced and so forth. More likely to be in the Atlantic. This development out in here is probably a tropical wave that is moving across, but also they have climatological factors that they put into those long-range outlooks. So I don't see any obvious triggering mechanism for that. You do see it in the long-range projections, but right now the odds are in the 10% or less range of that happening. So I wouldn't, put that in the forecast at this point. But as we get toward the end of September, of course, that's when we start looking over there near Central America for something to develop and move to the north. But nothing really in the offing with that yet.
Okay, so a lot of potential that we're looking at in the Atlantic. When we look at, I guess, from a physics standpoint, you've got potential energy, you've got kinetic energy. We got some kinetic energy in the Pacific, Bryan. We have Lorena and there's Kiko. I don't know which one's more surprising to you. We saw at the top of the hour some of the damage associated with Lorena, but Kiko, a Cat 4 this morning.
Yeah, that's these small hurricanes. They can just really spin up if the weather pattern is really conducive. But let's talk about Lorena first, because Lorena's on its last day, probably. They're still rating it a 75-mile-an-hour hurricane, but it's really just barely. And what got the southern part of Baja California Sur here is an outer band. It really wasn't the core of the storm, but there are mountains down there in that part of the peninsula, so that's what did it. But this is going to die out pretty quickly. Here you can see it's over cool water now, and it's going to move to the north, or either it's going to move to the north or the moisture is going to move to the north. In any case, the big issue here is the flood threat here in Baja and on up into maybe southern Arizona and New Mexico. We're going to have to watch for that moisture, that pretty strong monsoon surge coming north. Now, all right, let's look at Kiko here. Now, Kiko, 145-mile-an-hour Category 4, and you can see it's a small hurricane. And as we've said so many times, small hurricanes spin up, but then they weaken more easily as well. But because this is so well formed, the thinking is even over the cool water, it's going to hang together for a good long while. So it's going to approach the islands here, the Hawaiian Islands, as a pretty strong storm. They have 80-mile-an-hour winds even over this cool, relatively cool water. But it does look like it will unravel quickly. How much it unravels before it gets to Hawaii is an open question. And it is small, remember, so it doesn't have to miss by much to not have a whole lot of effect on the island. So we're just going to have to see. If it comes in here and affects the big island, that's a lot of moisture on those mountains and so forth. And, you know, as we've seen in the past, that's a bad combination. So we'll keep an eye on that. The slight angle difference makes a tremendous difference for how much moisture actually interacts with those Hawaiian islands and all those tall mountains. Again, though, we're talking about 6 or 7 days from now.
I was just going to say, yeah, we're looking about a week from now. All right, all things to continue to follow. Right. And before you go, Bryan, we know you're planning yet again to continue that conversation here on Fox Weather, not just with us, but throughout the day. Yeah. And you're going to bring a special guest along with you to our social media channels to answer some viewers' questions that they may have. Your Hurricane HQ&A, it is today, along with Colorado State University senior research scientist Dr. Phil Klotzbach. So 2 great minds talking tropics. And for folks at home who might be working on their question, what are you hoping some of the viewers online can take away from the discussion? I always like to say no bad question.
Yeah. No dumb one.
No dumb one.
Yep.
But no personal ones.
Yeah, there are no bad questions. I mean, Phil is everybody in hurricane world's resource for anything about historic hurricanes or the state of the ocean or the atmosphere or the season. He is the go-to guy. So it's fantastic to have Phil on and to take your questions. Really anything to do with historic hurricanes or why they make the seasonal forecast and how they do or how the season is going, what's going to happen in the second half of the season. There's always lots to talk about. So anyway, it'll be 4 o'clock on every social media channel, 4 o'clock Eastern time this afternoon on YouTube and Facebook and X and TikTok and LinkedIn and Instagram.
Everywhere.
We're live on all of them. So we'll look forward to getting your questions then.
Yeah, it's tough to miss. You have to intentionally miss it if you don't want to. And I like the format of these, less formal and more just, you're shooting it with somebody, just enjoying the conversation.
Yeah.
All right, Bryan.
It's a lot of fun. It really is.
Yeah, and we look forward to it later this afternoon. So you got a long day ahead of you. Thank you for joining us this morning. As always, Fox Weather Hurricane Specialist Bryan Norcross for us.
Okay.